Hi there. I'm Christi Sodano, and I'm here with Lumenalta. Um, Today, we're going to talk a little bit about AI-powered ad tech and how we're maximizing revenue to balance a more dynamic advertising landscape. So I'll be the 1,000th person here this week to say that AI is reshaping industries, but nowhere more than I think in advertising and media, where we're actually seeing commercialization before our eyes, unlike some of the other industries where it's more second order, third order changes. So in advertising and media, and particularly giving publishers more access to better inventory, greater audience segmentation, and driving higher revenue potential. So for local sports and niche media, these advancements are game changers, allowing, smaller platforms, smaller fish to compete with the giants. And I think maintain and provide better advertiser relationships. To dive deeper into these opportunities, I'm thrilled to be joined here today with Jesse Redniss, who's the CEO and co-founder of Precise.ai, which is really at the forefront of these changes in media and advertising. So, Jesse, welcome. Uh, you've worked across some of the most transformative areas in digital media. Can you share a little bit about your background and how you guys started Precise.ai?
Sure. My background, I actually come out of the media entertainment space, spent 25 years building digital products platforms at NBC Universal, launched my own consulting incubator. For a couple of years, I worked with the likes of Viacom, Turner, Mattel, mostly on innovative ad products for ad sales teams, marketing teams to bring to market for audience engagement-based branded content opportunities. That company was acquired by Warner Media and ended up being the chief innovation officer and head of data operations for Warner Media for about 6 years. So I spent a lot of time building out the machine learning AI capability sets for the core data infrastructure strategy of Warner Media across all the different properties, thinking about their kind of multi-channel, multimodal consumer touchpoints, how to package linear, streaming, social, on-site activations for optimal audience engagement. So I spent a lot of time with the data science organization thinking through audience insights, thinking through advertiser goals and KPIs to really drive outcomes for those business needs for the sales teams to bring to market. I then left and launched Consent, which we then merged and became Precise AI, to really help enable brands and publishers to think about proof-based data sets to build deterministic models in how they're building out cohort analysis, audience insights, ad sales activation, product offerings, and strategy as they go to market.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. So, as an advertiser and buyer of many media products today, I think one of the biggest challenges that I see and experience, or frustrations, I would say, is in my media portfolio, there still remains an incredible lack of transparency. Working with publishers is um, awesome because you get the joy of their audiences. But as I am pursuing, an IT business decision maker, one of the challenges is just understanding, yes, I'm reaching these people broadly, but what is the reaction? What is the engagement level? How am I curating better insights? How do I create better content for these folks? So can you speak a little bit about kind of how you guys are thinking about this challenge in the industry and where the push towards transparency goes for advertisers, publishers, etc.?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, if we stop and think about what transparency means, right? If you're operating internally and talking industry to industry, most people say transparency really has to do with ad pipeline and optimization, or transparency on sourcing of data and sourcing of inventory and where it's coming from. But on the flip side of that, when we think about transparency, there's transparency with the consumer themselves. How is their data being used and collected? How are they being labeled in regards to being an intender for something, right? Or a certain attribute that's getting attached to their overall ID structure. So there is the user experience aspect of transparency and how that comes back into play with the different products and services you're building when you're engaging with the consumer. But then on the flip side, yes, the entire pipeline between media agency, publisher on transparency. The entire industry right now is really calling for complete transparency end to end, mostly for operational pipeline management. And that's quite frankly really hard. The industry has not operated that way in a very, very long time. So now getting to the point where everything has to have a source, an origin source. Where did it come from? Who are you partnering with? Can you actually show me the entire pipeline of how data is moving, how inventory is moving, how it's being bid on, both in-house as well as then programmatically. So it's a really fascinating time in the industry to be playing in that trust transparency aspect of building relationships from a B2B side, as well as on a B2C side. I'd be really curious, how many people out here are actual salespeople, right, that are going to market and selling products or services? Like 3 or 4, okay, cool. How many people here are actual product people that are building products on publisher platforms? A couple. And everyone else, so you guys are engineers, data science, marketing, curious. Yeah, cool. So it's like a mixed audience here. So we're going to give like I guess a broad stroke across all different aspects of it. But I mean, from your perspective, Christi, I'd be really curious on what challenges, right, in regards to transparency, are you seeing and hearing with the publishers and the clients that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously a cross-channel attribution piece, like you mentioned, programmatic. Anything in the linear TV space, I think, down to something as specific as social or, direct buys with media publishers, it's all kind of the same challenge, but it's also connecting the data. I think that there's a very disjointed experience right now for, when I look at our buyer journey. And if we're starting with top of funnel activations in linear TV or something like that, and then pushing into remarketing, retargeting, and trying to build audiences across many of these channels is very difficult because you have walled gardens, you're facing all different kinds of particular limitations and constraints by these various channels. So I think we try to start with our ICP and focus on what that journey is, and then slowly unlock, access points across their different parts of their user journey. But I think that the limitation becomes on how you can enrich your ICP, your audience data across that into one sort of profile, identifying attributes along the way and taking those insights to get a richer understanding of who your audience is. And so that's where I really find the work that you guys are doing at Precise to be so interesting, because it doesn't feel like you're having an experience in one channel and then you have to rebuild and restart in another channel, another channel. I think there's a lot of opportunity for continuity and taking and enriching data kind of across the buyer experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I think as we approach the marketplace, like first party data, the data you own, the data you have a direct relationship with your consumer with, is the most powerful asset to start leveraging, and to kind of start, I guess, building some of these steps. It's becoming harder and harder to build true audience signal. Right. When you're out there advertising, your marketing, there's pixels, second, third party sources. And when we kind of harken back towards the aspect of transparency, on a global scale, when we think about the utilization of AI, things like the AI Act in the EU and other countries is calling for true permission-based activation of data. So that if your personal data or any data signals that gets used in a model, that there's an opportunity to kind of unwind that data from being used and leveraged in a model. The industry here in the United States doesn't really operate that way. We're just starting to get to the point where the industry is calling out bad actors, right, that are bringing in a lot of noise into the signal of true data assets. Again, third-party sources, pixels, a thing called ID bridging, in which you're basically taking a lot of IP addresses or emails and bridging it with different second and third party sources, or identity providers where it's not really built on data that you truly have a direct connection with your consumer with. And the industry is starting to really take notice of this and starting to drive for transparency. Right, there's the IAB Tech Lab literally just rolled out what they call their data transparency label, which means that when you build an audience segment, you're actually showcasing on a data transparency label the source of data that went into building that segment, When did you get it? Did you have the right consents? Or the permissions attached to it? So that when you build a segment or a cohort or a model from that, you know that you're building from a really good signal versus, oh, I found some emails from a list with this provider over here. I got some IP addresses for household targeting from another provider over there. I matched it with my list of first party connections with my fans. And now I have an entire stew, right, of how I'm bringing my segment to market. Those days, I think, are going to be very, very numbered in regards to not only the government and legislation cracking down, CCPA in California and others, but just the industry at large. Again, as it goes towards trust and transparency because of the drive towards permission-based AI model development. And when you think about it, at the end of the day here, like, you don't want garbage in, because when you do that, you get garbage out. So when we really think about building fantastic AI model developments that can be productized and personalized for your business KPIs, you want the truest signal possible in order to drive the best outcomes possible when you're developing AI models with your business.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're speaking to a problem that I'm personally facing, but I think a lot of our clients are facing. And it might be relevant to kind of bring this to reality through a use case that we have, a shared use case. We're working with a large entertainment client, and a big part of what we're doing is helping to enrich their first party data using Precise and allowing them to own and have greater visibility into their total inventory and how that they're providing that inventory to ad networks. Do you want to share a little bit more about kind of how you guys are taking, single data points and enriching them to create better audience curation and ultimately higher value inventories?
Absolutely. So at Precise, again, we are focused in on proof-based data sets. So we work with only partners that we come in and actually vet all the different data sources that they're bringing to the table to show that they have the right privacy policy, permissions to use data. We go through and read their entire process of ingesting all that data to essentially then put it through a verified credential proof process. So essentially, some components can actually sit on the blockchain. So you can do a verified credential lookup against those data attributes. But really, it's around that transparency of, do you have the rights to use the data in the ways that you want to execute with that data set? This client that we're working with together is fantastic because they have a multitude of streaming platforms, in-venue opportunities, mobile streaming apps, music apps, as well as casinos in which you're actually uploading your license as part of registration into a platform. And so when you think about the quality of data that you're not getting shallow, oh, I scraped IP addresses from people coming to my free ad-supported ad platform in which they don't have to register. So I'm just grabbing IP addresses or I'm grabbing nades. We're really looking at authentic connections that this brand is making directly with consumers. So actual authenticated emails, actual authenticated IP addresses that are attached to those emails. In some cases, the actual license information to show that you have a verified true person as part of your fan and audience base. We then use that to essentially build their identity spine. And the identity spine isn't just for advertising purposes and use cases. It can help power their marketing, research, product insights, and use cases as well to essentially build, right, this brand's seed set ID spine. And then from there, we're actually building cognitive decision engines based on the different inventory they have available across the touch points of this major publisher. So looking at the ad products that they have in their streaming applications, their podcasting applications, in-venue, on-site screens, etc., to actually build an optimized kind of mix model of how their ad sales team can go to market. Because at the end of the day, you could activate immediately and say, hey, everything was going to go programmatic. But at the end of the day, you have an actual sales team that can really think about branded content opportunities, packaging, sponsorship opportunities. You can use your AI models to look at deep audience affinities between the brands that you want to have advertise with your audiences to pick the right placements across your properties. So the platform we've been building out, I guess you can kind of call it like a pre SSP DSP kind of control hub, right? And we won't tell you the exact name here. but it helps this team really think about maximizing revenue value opportunities based on dynamic in the moment sales opportunities with those audiences. So is there a big fight that's happening at one of the casinos? Are there streaming baseball games that this carrier may have? What are the peak moments in which you can aggregate big sponsor opportunities versus long tail consumption models that happen? And how do you think about that? It's been really hard for the industry to actually have people running systems and spreadsheets and pivot tables to figure out inventory avails. And now you actually have the power of machine learning and AI models to help you identify that, run the math in mere seconds, and then make recommendations for you to figure out the optimal revenue opportunities based on the ad sales opportunities you have in front of you.
Love it. So we're talking about an example that's a large player in the market. Like as you're saying, they've got every form of media out there and a really rich data set to begin with. So we are only adding to their an already rich data set. But then I think that there's um an outcome that's greater transparency for the sales teams to take to their advertisers and really demonstrate where they were effective, how many, who they were reaching, those kinds of things, questions that are actually a black box in most cases for advertisers. And so building that trust has been a big part of it. If you are a smaller player, kind of just entering market, competing, growing your app, all of these things, there's huge opportunities because you can take a single piece of data, enrich it with data sets that are or with AI that Precise's service provides. And I think that there's, you know, big opportunity to see larger multiples on your CPMs, as well as other revenue earning opportunities. Can you share a little bit more about how you're seeing that in like the local and niche media space with some of your clients?
Yeah, so we're seeing, and you're going to start hearing more and more about this, but like dynamic audience segment development. So when most people develop a sales offering or creating their marketing campaign, they build personas. Who are your top 8 types of personas that you're going to then market towards, and then you're going to craft the right language to go market towards them. You're going to create the right creative to actually engage with them on the right platforms. We're living now in a day and an age where you can use and leverage AI to help continually to generate generative segments. So with activations on SSPs and DSPs and your own return path data, you can actually see the success that you're having while your marketing campaign or advertising campaign is in flight. This means that you can optimize these audience segments, take off the ones that are working and using, model from those to say, hey, these are working towards my business goals and KPIs. I want to see more segments that look like these, less that look like those. And leveraging a lot of real-time audience dynamics, you can do that not just from developing the right audience segments, but also from changing the creative itself. So taking your core brand creative offering, dynamically changing colors, changing scenes, changing backgrounds, targeting capabilities. This is now being brought to SMBs all across the world, so that you can use generative AI capability sets to actually develop these multivariant creative offerings to sit on top of your audience segments and activate a campaign that might have been one brand message before can now be 40 brand messages with different variances on the creative matched towards the audience segments. We're doing this right now with a couple fitness brands, local kind of health clubs in the Philadelphia area. They are currently thinking about how they look at their audience segments, their affinities to actually drive a lot of local based business partnerships and sponsorships of these gyms. This is something they were never really doing before, and they're actually starting to generate a net new revenue stream by bringing in these sponsor opportunities, but it's also increasing the overall membership rate that they're seeing at their gyms. People actually are finding the association and through human behavior are putting these two things together subconsciously and are now signing up for the gym.
Yeah.
So all these tools are now available at scale, right? At the big, Googles and Metas and Amazons, as well as a lot of the agency partners that are out there are building these tools out to make it far easier for brands and publishers to move quickly and take advantage of things that used to take teams of 10, 15 people to do can now be done with 1 or 2 people in an AI pipeline toolkit.
It's really impressive some of the use cases that we're seeing in our business as well. I was just talking to someone the other day about a healthcare client we have that's trying to grow their patient base, and they're looking at what is it called? National Healthcare Provider Registry, sponsored by Medicaid and Medicare, to identify attributes within the provider's universe. So things like um, specialty, location, things like that, and then targeting the engagers with this content through reviews, etc., and pulling those attributes into better audience curation that ultimately informs better creative that is fed through your CDP, through your CRM. And before you know it, you are creating a really tailored piece of content that is exactly fed to your audience in the right moment, right time to say something. We were joking about this, but like, does your provider have cold hands? Come here where we have warm hands, things like that. And I just think that the opportunity for small businesses is huge because you don't really need the huge creative teams that you used to have. You don't need to, you're not manually creating variants, and you're certainly not manually creating audiences. So I think, it's something that we are seeing a lot is how to build these agentic AI workflows. And the barrier to entry is so much lower than it was, even 2 years ago, I would say. These tools are incredible. That's a lot about what we're doing and how we fit into this picture at Lumenalta. But kind of curious, are you seeing this with other partners? Are there any practical examples that you've particularly been inspired by?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we're seeing it across the board, not just in the media entertainment space. I think your use case that you just highlighted here in the health space, biosciences space, they are now actually running AI-driven variant-based insights to help solve different forms of cancer. And when you see stories that come out around how you can actually map a genome, use these capability sets to understand variances, like allele variances and whatnot, that can emerge as part of sharing in a federated way insights on DNA and genome aspects, you actually can expedite the solving of cancer. And you can generate new drug opportunities and test them out in market much, much faster. So I think it's a fascinating time that when you think about the toolkit, right, and building your pipeline, right, and your product that is very specific around what you're looking for, there's something magical about it when you actually build these products out. And I'm sure, through Lumenalta's engagement with the various kind of clients you're engaging with, more and more questions are starting to be asked around how do we do more of this? How do we build more of this? Can you help us do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Now I get to go home and tell my husband that I'm playing a small role in curing cancer by sitting on stage. Yeah.
We share do
Okay, so we'll leave a little bit of time for questions, but where do you see this going in the next 3 to 5 years? We were talking a lot about, content creators and what they need to be doing. How do we get started? How are we moving the needle, in our businesses every day right now?
Yeah, so I think right now when we think about the next couple of years, I think the past 2 years has been the first surge of everyone clamoring over AI capability sets and then figuring out how do you monetize the known AI capability sets. So a lot of publishers are out there right now and have been licensing their text-based data, their image-based data to OpenAI, to Anthropic. It's dicey when you do that, right? You were basically falling in the exact same trap that all the streamers did back in the day when they started licensing their back catalogs to Netflix, right? You're essentially handing them your fandom, all of your content so that they can launch their own systems, learn what's working, what's not working, because they have the deep technology and infrastructure to understand audience engagement. So we're now kind of entering another age where creator is a whole new mindset. We've got influencers, we have athletes, you have talent themselves. And when brands and publishers and big platforms are clamoring for first party data, direct relationships with consumers and their fan, we're finding that influencers, content creators, athletes are doing the exact same thing, right? They're trying to create direct relationships with their fan base, capture emails and cell phone numbers so that they can actually build a platform business no matter where they go. So if they are native on Insta or YouTube or Snap or TikTok, they're activating in those walled gardens to reach their audience. Versus when they start really creating their own direct to fan relationship and build a first party connection, they could literally build an entire infrastructure and business platform using a lot of AI and agentic workflows and products and tools, very little support, and actually scale their own business as an athlete, their own business as an influencer, no matter where they go. They can go and start in Alison Felix's use case. She has her own shoe brand, Seish. She is launching her own retail activations on Amazon and others. She is receiving all the transaction data from that merchandise exchange that goes into her business platform as she thinks about scaling her opportunity. So I think that's where the next couple of years, at least we're seeing, the business is moving towards is from the major massive players. It's now going the next tier and tier 2 and tier 3 down, and then it'll eventually trickle all the way down to the individual contributor, business or athlete that can have their own stack that is trained, AI training their business stack around their KPIs and needs to help them thrive, quite frankly.
It's incredible. Anyway, well, curious to hear more about Alison Felix, to be honest. But I think from my perspective, I'm looking a little bit more near term on the just opening up at the black box of transparency, because that's like the thorn in my side, most immediately. But I think what you're saying about, owning your inventory and really investing in the inventory is where all publishers need to be going, because, in short order here, it's not going to be acceptable to not know who is seeing things and why. You're certainly not going to be able to charge a premium in terms of your CPMs for that, for, the privilege of running ads. So I think that's really the opportunity that we see as well. I think that's kind of it in terms of our talk, but we wanted to open up before to any questions. Any?
Anybody have any questions? There we go.
So you touched on dynamic segmentation a little bit earlier, and I was thinking about the sports world and how sports organizations are trying to create multi-generational fan engagement now. What does that look like from like a data set perspective and some of those strategies associated?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am the father of 4 boys, and active bringing them to rugby games as well as Giants games, and one of them is an Eagles fan, so he gets kicked out of the house. But it's really important as we think about data sets that go into targeting marketing messages, right? So again, I'm the credit card holder, I'm the one who's driving the transaction, but it's the kids themselves that are driving the fandom and the fervor for wanting to participate. So whether it's an esport event, Fortnite event that we've gone to, or Giants games, they're the ones who are creating all the demand. So it's really interesting how, as a brand, whether you're a sporting brand, like if you're the Giants team itself, how you think about developing messaging, right? Developing messaging for the direct call to action for a transaction from me. Hey, we know there's a lot of interest going on and there's a lot of fandom in your house. You should get on the game right now. Here's 20% off. So it's a call to action immediately for me to convert, versus a message that they're probably going to send to my children, which is going to be on Insta or TikTok or others, which just has to be broad-based, because you don't want to cross the line of like COPPA compliance and using any household specific data to target a message directly to them. So again, like a lot of legalese and privacy hurdles you have to go through, as well as then a coordination of strategies on how you're targeting individual devices versus households. Almost impossible, right, for individual people and humans to understand the complexities of that. Really possible when you think about using agentic workflows and transparency and permission-based systems to ensure that you're actually making sure those targets happen at the right time in the right place. So important to create that generational flow, right, of fandom, as well as the conversion you're looking for as a brand.
It's a great question.
It's a great question.
Hi, I am Marcus. I'm the CMO of Aspective, and we do virtual product placement in the dynamic area, right? So we add products. There you go. And that's what one of the challenges that I have as a CMO too is like we're trying to make our virtual products very specifically personalized for you, right? Gender, location, whatever. But the trend of I want my privacy to be my privacy, I want my data to be my data. As a brand, how can we balance those two things? That having the consumer in mind, as we want to provide you with the right stuff, but we also don't want to overuse your data or bad handle your data. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know, Christy, if you want to jump on that or me.
I have a point of view around utility. I think that in my experience, I think that it comes down to utility and how useful is the information. I care a little bit less about, personally, if you know something about me, if you're using it respectfully and in the right context, and I think that that is kind of what you're saying, hard to manage when you're using human resources to really target effectively. And so, as we were just saying, with agentic AI, you have much more opportunity to get the right message to the right person. So yes, starts with understanding your audience and really having the right signals, the right attributes, um, to have a rich database of understanding of what they're looking for. But then also, not you don't cross the line into invasion if you're being very useful. So you get to know them very well, and then serve them things that are letting them know that you're there to support their ambition. So that's sort of how we approach it, and that's how we think about it within my team. But I'm sure you have.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of unique data signals that you can use and leverage to help personalize those dynamic object swaps, right? Content metadata, context metadata, behavioral data. So a lot of non-PII based data sets that can be used to add attributes to dimensionalize a household, right? So you can use everything from the fact that we know that, Jesse loves the color dark blue, right? Based on consumption habits, builds that he's done on different Ford Broncos, right? Over the last 6 months, whatever it may be. These are important things so that if you're Ford, you go and you retarget my household, you can automatically serve me up the ad that has the blue Bronco in it, right? Versus an individual device, and it's my wife who's building something and she wants the green truck instead. Ford has the ability to actually go in and understand the content metadata, page views on a device level of who's consuming what videos, what content, what words on a page. All of that information is really, really rich information to help personalize how you target in a non-creepy way, right? When I see the blue one, I'm like, shit, like I was going to go build the blue one anyway, and here they just served it up to me. That's value exchange in which I don't have to go do it myself. So I think when you're thinking about dynamic object swapping, it becomes a really interesting space, right? So one of the best case studies of branded content that's out there is the early days of Seinfeld. Pepsi actually was a brand sponsor. They were integrated into the show, and Jerry Seinfeld's literally there holding a Pepsi can, right? Nobody knew that the show was going to be a huge, huge hit and go into syndication all over the world and make billions of dollars. Guess what Pepsi got? The best branded content ad buy they ever could have done in time, because here we are 30 years later and their Pepsi can is still in Jerry's hand. However, it's not selling cherry Pepsi. It's not selling the new orange Pepsi or diet Pepsi or whatever it may be. But if you can dynamically swap that object out in real time based on recency, time, and a new ad buy, or you could be a conquester and be like, I'm Coca-Cola and I'm swapping out Pepsi and I'm replacing with new Coke can, that becomes a really interesting opportunity. So you can do a lot of video-based identification for the objects. You can then identify, is it the right household, a Pepsi household versus Coca-Cola household? And then as a sales team, you can go proactively sell that to Coca-Cola, knowing that, hey, every single year we still see 2.3 million views of this specific episode with the Pepsi can in it. That's an opportunity for a sales placement. So that there's a lot of great intel and content data and context data you can add in to help you decision on what can be valuable.
With that, I think we're at time, but thank you guys so much for the great questions and rapt attention. And
thank you all so much.
Be here.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.